Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lil-Lets Talk, the vodcast where we talk all things periods. Now, if it's your first time here, hi, I'm Bokang, one of your hosts, and next to me, I've got my lovely co-host, Megan Ross, who's also a lead moderator on the platform. Hey, Meg.
Hey, Bokang. Nice to see you.
Girl, it's always good to see you.
I'm so looking forward to today's episode because we're talking about something that I think we can just unpack for days, and that's mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've got the perfect guest with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
The one, the only, the beautifully dressed, might I add, Dr. Gynae, Dr. Mpume Zenda professionally, but Dr. Gynae, hello.
Hello, wonderful, gorgeous
So
girl.
nice to see you.
I am Dr. Gynae, or Dr. Zenda professionally, OB-GYN sexologist, and I'm so excited to be part of this conversation. It's an important one, and I think everybody watching has got some nuggets to take home.
Should we launch into question one?
Yes, we have got some questions from the platform. So, Doc, we're just going to pose them to you and then, definitely learn a lot today. So, question number one is, what is PMS? Is it real?
Yeah. I think that's so important. Firstly, the part about, is it real? So when you think PMS, or what the actual name is premenstrual, it's what happens before you get your period. And as you know, or maybe not, as a woman, you are a cyclical being, which means your hormones are constantly going up and down. Now, just before you get your period, in fact, the thing that instigates the period is that drastic drop in your estrogen, but also your progesterone. So most of your hormone are like literally on your ankles. But what that does is, because hormones don't only affect in terms of our reproductive organs, in terms of periods, but they also affect how we feel, our mood, our emotions. So at that point, you are low on estrogen, you're low on progesterone, you're actually even low on testosterone. Those are all your nice kind of hormones. And so almost 70% of women, or people with vulvas and vaginas, will generally experience, especially in their reproductive phase, will experience some kind of a mood change. Now, this can either be, either in symptoms of moods, but it can also be physical symptoms. And then the group, we call it the premenstrual syndrome. Not everybody goes through them. Not everybody experiences every single one of them. And I'm sure in some way in our talk, we will kind of touch on what are some of the common symptoms that you're likely to experience. Is it real? It's definitely real. I am living proof. I get,
And here.
I literally get like suicidal kind of PMS. Wow. And you kind of look back and like, what happened? Who was that girl?
Yeah.
And it has been so helpful to be able to understand what your body is doing, but not only understand what your body is doing, how do you anticipate yourself so that you're still functional and you can help yourself and allow the people around you to assist you at that time. What do you need around that time so that it's not catastrophic, and you bounce back and it's like back to normal as soon as you start your period?
Sure, I absolutely love how you really just broke it down, especially from a biological kind of standpoint, because people are so quick to dismiss PMS, and even to an extent, even ourselves, we're like, well, what we're experiencing, was that really real, or was I just being dramatic? So now you really broke it down and say there's actually hormonal changes that are happening in your body. So I really love and appreciate that.
And I think, just drawing on that, I think it really points to the fact that when it comes to anything mental, when we're talking mental illness or just awareness around mental health, there is this tendency to believe that ththings are sort of not real, in a sense. And I think that's what happens with PMS. We think we're just crying, for no reason.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it goes even deeper and more intense than that, from a perspective of, generally, a lot of women are not believed about their symptoms. And often, if you can't prove it, people just assume, well, I don't know if it's really real. And I think from us as clinicians, it's so important to educate, not only from a like intense clinical, but just for every day-to-day kind of girl, like just understand your body. Keep some kind of a calendar so that you know how you feel when you're ovulating. You know how you feel when it's PMS. You know how you feel when the period starts. You know how you feel when you're having what does even a period pain looks like or feel like for those who have it. And then over and above that, empower people with the tools on how do I handle it so that, like I said, it's not like this catastrophic thing that every month you're dreading, but you actually start putting things in place. I call it anticipating yourself. Like, for example, there's no way you should be setting up big meetings when you know your period is around the corner, because you're going to be snapping at everybody, and then everybody's going to be like calling you names, which is what happens in a lot of like, you know, our workspaces. We have to be intentional about understanding our bodies, but not only that, educating the people around us so that the environments we work in, the environments we live in are conducive and supportive for the things that we are going through. The spaces have to be for us.
That's so true. And I mean, Dr. Zenda, in terms of like intimate partner space, how do we inform our partners in a way that like doesn't scare them off, but at the same time like helps them empower us, you know, when we're PMSing?
It begins with us. I always say it's incredible how we can be so informed about everything that's going on in the world, about celebrities, about this and that person. And yet, if I had to ask a lot of women or people with vulvas and vaginas, what's your cycle? Are you a 28-day girl? Are you a 27-day? Are you a 30-day? Most of us don't even know. So if you don't know, and it kind of comes across as that thing where, have you ever noticed how everybody almost seems surprised every time their period comes, like, oh, it's my period. It's like, well, if you've been having a period for a while, and it's that thing of going back to the basics of get a calendar, track your period. Also, that will allow you to know when things are not moving in the usual kind of schedule that you are used to. And so educating ourselves, but then the people around you. We don't often speak up about what do we need. You know, people often think wanting flowers and chocolate when you're PMSing is just like faffing, or it's just like being needy. No, actually, during that time, what happens is you need like the sugar that your body literally craves, a lot of carbohydrates. And so you generally will want to take on things like pastry, my guilty pleasure. Chocolate. It's those things that the cocoa in the chocolate, actually, it helps to lift up your mood as well. So those are the things that are important to be able to speak. When you understand your body and how you are cycling, then you will say, I need space. I need time out, whether it's work. I need to work alone. I need a little bit more sugar. I need a hug. Even the way we are intimate with, you know, let's say our partners is very different. I often say, I hope PG-18, during ovulation, you want to be on top of everything. But during PMS, you just want to be hugged and tugged. And some people not even, don't touch me, don't, you know, when you think about the symptoms, you feel bloaty, you feel, you know, some people have like nipple tenderness, for example. The mood is very irritable, almost depressive sometimes people even with things like a bit of anxiety. So those are not the kind of symptoms when you're going through, you need to be around people too much. So back to your question, get to know yourself, then explain, get the material. And thank you, Lil-Lets, for this conversation, because these are the kind of easy material that people can, let's watch it together, babe, so that you understand what I'm going through. That way, you don't feel almost useless in the space, but you know exactly what my person needs. She needs space. I'll take the couch, babe. You know, don't be trying to like have like a busy evening and you plan, you know, then your ecosystem starts to be supportive and be that which you need during that time.
Cool. Thank you so much, Dr. Zenda. Let's have a look at what question 2 is. Question 2, can taking prescribed medication for depression affect your cycle, making it so much worse in my case to the point of blacking out due to pain?
That's a very interesting question because there's a few layers there. One, this is somebody who's already on some kind of medication for a particular mental health illness, right? So you always have to separate what is normal from what isn't. We spoke about premenstrual syndrome, for example, which is something that is very confined to those few days just before your period. Anything beyond that is already a no-no. So that's the first layer of describing. So this is somebody who's already got a diagnosis, so which already has its own symptoms, which may or may not be overlapping, that particular premenstrual syndrome. Secondly, it's always good to have a conversation with so for example, psychiatry will fall into the space of diagnosing and treating a mental health illness, as opposed to she speaks about, or the person asking speaks about pain, which is very pain and blacking out. And I'm like, the two are kind of separate. But remember, when we are experiencing, whether it's pain, whether it's emotional or psychological, it's happening to one person and it's perpetual. So one of the things that will happen is very often your mental well-being or symptoms thereof don't necessarily interfere with your cycle, but your cycle in itself, if you're already predisposed, so people who already have underlying mental health will have a more predisposition to things like a worse off premenstrual cycle. So I don't necessarily believe that, the cycle in itself or the medication is causing the blackouts and the severe pain, so to speak, but pain exacerbates another, and very often it becomes this vicious cycle. If I've got a mental health diagnosis, my PMS is likely to be worse off. If the medication that I'm taking is also making it, worse off, it shouldn't make you have more pain. It's supposed to make you a little bit better. But for example, something like it'll affect your sexual function. If it affects your sexual function, that means there might be tension in the house. If there's tension in the house, it's another vicious loop back into that. So how I always kind of address questions like that is, let's break it down. What are you going through, and who are your treating physicians? You probably have a gynae, you have a psychiatrist, and we do well in having a communication. If it's a big deal, let's say, again, sexual issues in the house because of the treatment, I can't take a person off a treatment for mental illness because that's also a problem. But hey, colleague, this is an issue I'm picking up on my side. How can we change the medication so that it is not making any of the symptoms worse off, or it's not creating another issue in an already difficult situation? So to be clear, I don't necessarily think that medication is causing blackouts and pain, but if this person already had painful premenstrual syndrome, already having like anxiety or depressive symptoms during that period, a layer of mental illness will feel that much worse than somebody who doesn't.
Okay, so it's also about taking a really holistic viewpoint, right?
Absolutely.
And having that conversation between practitioners.
Yeah.
Which is not something, I don't know if that's something that you have often, but it's not something in my experience that I've been lucky enough to have with multiple practitioners speaking to each other. And
it's supposed to. In principle, it's supposed to, but a lot of practitioners, especially I find funny enough in the private space, we don't do as well in this whole multidisciplinary. Again, maybe I'm biased because I work a lot with women or people with vaginas and vulva, in the sense of understanding how important the holistic approach is. I call it is a little bit of everything. It is the lifestyle. It is the relationships in the home. It is the exercise. It is the medication we're giving. It is also even my setup and my sense of creating a safe space for my client that allows, or that adds or takes away from them feeling like I am getting better. So it's the multidisciplinary is, good Lord, I hope one day we get it right for our people. But very often everybody just does their own things, like, well, I've treated this, you sort that out. That's not me, it's you. It shouldn't be so.
I'm stressed. Yeah, I think it's just because this just reminds me of just how many factors there are, when it comes to your body, when it comes to your period. I know, Meg, we actually wanted to also touch on PMDD as well.
Yes.
Because we spoke about PMS. Can you actually let's get the full, because that's the acronym. What's the full title again?
Dr. Gynae, please help us out.
Yeah. So there's always a difference, and I like to look at. I think we're probably going to touch on this as well.
Yeah.
So premenstrual depressive, like actual depression. There's a big difference between something that is just a syndrome versus a diagnosis of an actual depression. Now, one of the biggest differentiators is the time. When we talk as clinicians and as scholars, we've got these definitions. So, for example, when you actually have the depression, it is way more than, it overlaps beyond the 2 to 3 days. We generally have a cutoff of 5 days because everybody's cycle is different. So, if it goes beyond the period of 5 days, if it does not lift, so that those feelings of irritability, mood changes don't lift as soon as you start your period, there's a problem there. There's something way beyond than just a premenstrual. That's why I was saying earlier on, you see, with the premenstrual, it's like those 2-3 days where you feel like, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna be suicidal. But as soon as you start your period, you kind of even look back and be like, who was that girl, right? And that's where the biggest differentiator. Like I said, as clinicians, we have these definitions and we throw them around. But my advice is always to clients, whenever you don't feel well, that's a good enough reason to have it investigated. That's a good enough reason to have your doctor, especially if it's going on for longer. Some people will say for longer than 2 weeks. And I'm saying, I'm not going to wait for 2 weeks. If I've started my period starts and ends, and I'm still feeling on the low, something else is going on there. And it may not necessarily be a depression or a premenstrual depression, but it actually could be something related to other parts of your hormones. It could be a thyroid issue. It could be an adrenal issue. It's important to understand that you can advocate for yourself as soon as you feel like, no, this is not the usual. Again, back to understanding yourself, knowing what your normal is, so that when you deviate from the normal, you know exactly what is going on.
I think you said something that was so important there, and that was a good enough reason.
Yes.
Always.
It's the same with pain. It's the same with there's this say that when, for example, men have a flu, they want their mother, their grandmother, their dog, everybody's. And I think that it's actually such a good thing, because that's somebody saying, I'm advocating for myself. I'm shouting out for all the things that I need when I feel this way. You'll get somebody with a vagina or a vulva or a woman going to work sick, feeling down,
totally.
and literally slaving through all of that. And I'm like, for who? For what?
Yeah.
Don't do it. Advocate for yourself when you don't feel well. That's your chance to say, I'm not okay. What help can I get? What support can I get? And where necessary, I need a professional to step in. I would rather we say, it's nothing, than for you to sit 6 months down the line, you've been experiencing depression, and we see it a lot.
Sure, Yana, absolutely incredible. And I love how we've spoken about how medication and mental health has an influence on your cycle and your body. But I think in our next question, we touch on motherhood.
Oh.
So I'm going to...
The big one.
Yeah, the big one. So I'm going to just hop right into it, because I really want to, get into this one. I think we'll have a good chat about this one. My daughter is 1 now, and I'm still struggling with postpartum depression. Some days are better than others. What are some ways I can try and take care of myself mentally? I really want to become the best mother there is for my daughter.
Man.
Oh, this one, I have a lot of love, care, and empathy for moms, because I think we were all sold this idea that just be a superhero and make it work one way or the other. And the only way you show up is by saying, I'm doing well. And the reality of my experience, both as a mom, but also looking after a lot of moms, is not so. when there is a new baby or a newborn, there's also a new mom.
Absolutely.
And we need, as a society, culturally and otherwise, to be able to say, just like we can overtly see that a newborn is completely helpless, can we take and assume the same kind of notion with the moms? And if you think about it, actually, I think the first 5 years are the hardest.
Oh, they are.
5
They
years.
really are.
I thought you were going to say 5 months.
5 days.
Absolutely not. The first 5 years are the hardest. And remember as well, you're not just dealing with a child, you're dealing with yourself as well, the changes that have happened. So again, just like we would look at, for example, premenstrual syndrome or premenstrual depression, depression disorder, we also have to look at what are the biological changes. So if she is struggling, and this is a big one people don't realize, we praise, and it's a good thing, breastfeeding, for example. But what breastfeeding does is that it shoots up your prolactin, which is the hormone that is necessary to produce milk, but it suppresses everything else that is supposed to make you feel good. That's why when you are breastfeeding, especially in those months where it's exclusive, you generally don't ovulate, you don't have a period, because it suppresses your estrogen, your sex drive hormones. So on the one hand, you're an amazing mom because you're breastfeeding, but you feel miserable, right? And then the stresses of life. I think we underestimate what it is necessary. I mean, one of the best questions, or maybe not, one of my favorite questions I ask a mom who's about to deliver, I say, what kind of help and support do you have? Because they're like, oh no, it's just me and my partner. We've got a nice cute flat. I'm like,
No, where are your people?
Get your people, all of them in numbers if you have them. And if you are away from, family and friends, get a helper where you can. And if you don't have that, please shout out at any point when you're not coping. Every woman is different. Every woman has a different stressor. If there's financial issues, it's going to impact. If there is sexual issues that are not being met, it's going to, if there's pain. So in terms of how it varies, all the things that can affect someone and sort of make it take longer is all these things. If there's pain, if what type of delivery, was it a complicated or not? Do you have a healthy baby or not? Did you have a prem baby? All these things. So the question she asks is, like I said, I have a lot of empathy. Of course, we'd have to unpack what is her circumstance like? What are the things that are causing stressor? And some moms don't have the option of staying or having maternity leave, so they have to go back to the workplace almost immediately. Who's looking after your baby? How do you feel? We think it's we think it's just like, oh, okay, someone is looking after my baby. A lot of women have mom guilt about, 2 months, 3 months later, I had to go back and, stop breastfeeding maybe, and go back to work. But if I don't go back to work, the finances don't add up. If finances don't add up, I cannot put food on the table. Those are all the psychological things that impact over and above all the bodily things that are happening. And so the big question is, what is your circumstance? Where and what kind of help and support do you have? And thirdly, have you raised it with your professional, your healthcare professional? And if they are not hearing you, guys, I've got this thing. You are not married to your doctor or your nurse, or if they are not serving you in the way that you need, change them. Find someone else, get a second opinion, scream, shout, do what you need to do to feel okay and feel like you're being supported, heard, and are accessing the necessary help and medication if we need to get to that point. I think that my biggest sort of like last word to that is learn to advocate for yourself and know that it is your right to advocate for yourself and for those that are around you.
I absolutely love that. I think, coming to the end of the episode, I just feel so empowered and honestly just inspired to learn more about my specific body, and to use the resources at hand that I have,
Exactly, and utilize them to the best of kind of exhaust them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like really.
Exhaust them. You are paying tax for those resources. Do what you need to do to make sure your well-being you are the custodian, and the monopoly is yours in terms of your own well-being. Prioritize yourself, look after yourself, and when you don't feel supported, raise a flag.
I love that.
Raise a
a flag.
I want to raise my flag right now. And Dr. Gynae, we know that we can find you on the Let's Talk.
Yes.
But for those who are watching and would like to know more about you and follow you, where can they get you?
We do, luckily, a lot of educational work on our social media platforms. So at dr.gynae, whether you are a TikToker, Instagrammer, Facebooker, we are there. And even then, people often ask, so where do we actually find you in terms of practice? I am at Morningside Mediclinic. If in doubt, just drop us a DM on our social media platforms. Somebody will get back to you. But I also always encourage, because there's often this divide in terms of private and public. You can ask any healthcare professional to assist you with, oh, okay, doc, but I can't go to private. Where can I go? I am still very much in touch with what's happening in the public sector, for example. And I will say, where do you stay? Where's your nearest hospital? Go find so-and-so, or go to the nearest, to this hospital. That's how I believe it's supposed to be. But I think our social media platforms, dr.gynae, is probably the easiest and most accessible.
No, we absolutely love that, and we love having you here.
So much.
Yeah. Next season, come back, please.
Yeah, please.
Always. You are family.
The Let's Talk family.
You definitely are family. And for everyone else who is watching, we hope you enjoyed. If you guys have any more questions, any queries, please go on the Let's Talk platform. We've got you covered. We've got the excellent responders. We've got experts like Dr. Gynae. And yeah, guys, that is a wrap on episode 4. We're going to see you again in the next episode. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye. Peace.